scheduled to chat with us today.
Very excited. Thank you for having me.
All right. First things first, how are you? Where are you? How you living?
I'm okay. I'm in Brooklyn. It's fine. It's fine. We're doing fine. I'm worried about September and when kids go back to school. I mean, not for myself because I don't have any children. So that's one lucky thing about this is that I only have to worry about myself right now, which is kind of nice. But I'm okay. I'm all right.
How has the pandemic been impacting your day-to-day life and work?
Oh my God. Well, I used to travel a lot for work. I would go somewhere at least once a month. So that's changed dramatically in the last 6 months. It's been very hard to be far from my family and from my friends. Everybody that I'm really close with is in Toronto or in Calgary. And so that has been a real challenge and has been really frustrating. But I'm trying to be patient and trying to remember that I'm incredibly lucky and, you know, my employment hasn't been affected by this, and my ability to sit in my apartment and be mad, which is what I was doing before, remains steady. So I'm all right, but I'm trying to maintain some optimism about what's going to happen in the next 6 months.
And which we all don't know, as you said, the crushing reality of the future is on us. And I think you're so right around just being thankful about our capacity to do the social isolation, though it's real tough. Those of us who have the privilege to be working from at home, like I'm just so mindful of that. There are folks who have to go day in and day out. They have no choice. They got to go in and do what they got to do. So we are really privileged that way. And for those folks who are still working on the front lines, doing, you know, stuff in stores and doing stuff in restaurants and all those kind of direct service, we would just really wish for your safety and hope for your safety and hope that everybody wears a masks and socially distances and does all the things that we can do to keep us safe. So along those lines, we know the pandemic isn't really being felt equally. And for example, we know that women and racialized people are being disproportionately impacted in lots of ways. I saw statistics coming out from New York, where you're at now, and it's been really shocking. So tell us a bit about the impacts that concern you right now.
Oh, well, I mean, chief amongst them is that right now I don't think people are going to the doctor because they think it's a burden. So that's already an issue for racialized people, especially in the States where you're not really guaranteed any health insurance without your employment. Also, a lot of people have lost their jobs, so that affects their ability to have insurance and be able to go to the doctor. You know, I was also reading a study the other day that talked about Black babies, and they have a higher chance of survival if they're cared for by a Black doctor than if they're cared for by a white doctor. So, I mean, this has highlighted every type of inequity in North America. I mean, everywhere, but in North America in particular. I think we like to pat ourselves on the back a lot as being, you know, this wonderful place, especially in the States. Everything's great, land of the free, America, eagle, whatever. Like, that's not true. Like, and I think this has really made it glaringly clear how bad things actually are. I mean, even just thinking about when schools closed in March, one of the big concerns was a lot of kids are fed at school and they don't have access to food otherwise because they live with food insecurity every day. So what are these kids doing and where are they getting fed? And the number of community fridges that have opened up in my neighborhood alone is like encouraging, but also incredibly depressing. Like, that bums me out so much that this is like a necessary thing that just people in the neighborhood have to do because there's no social safety net here for them. And there's nothing that they can cling to. So, you know, I don't know. I said this sort of when Trump got elected, where I was like, sometimes things need to get so bad for anybody to like, for certain people to recognize that they're bad. And apparently that wasn't enough. So this is another one where now everybody is affected by this. You don't get to squeak away. I mean, certainly people are trying. There have been about 1 million tweets about like, New York is over. I went to Connecticut. Now I live in Connecticut. God bless. Stay there forever. I'm fine with it. Please give me your apartment. But you know, it's brutal. It's brutal. If you think about it too long, it's so easy to sink into despair about it. Yeah.
That's right. But tell me about the community fridges that you're speaking of. That's something that I haven't heard of before.
Yeah, so people have like different like community organizers, and there's lots of mutual aid going on. So like I think there's at least 4 in my like immediate purview. People have just plugged in fridges and said like leave what you can, take what you want, no questions asked, like go for it. And so when I go grocery shopping, I leave stuff in there. There are mutual aid organizations that have popped up that are both taking financial donations, and then also you can volunteer to buy groceries for people, drop them off. There's lots of people who can't go outside right now because they're immunocompromised, and it is scary to go to the grocery store, especially in a city as densely populated as New York. That's really hard. I'm never 6 feet away from anybody when I go outside. So all that stuff has come up, and it's come up because people have been thoughtful.
That's so wonderful to hear. And at the same time, too, I wish things were not such that you had to do those ingenious things that you see people doing in community.
All right.
Speaking, that's okay. What was that?
Who knows? I'm on a motorcycle.
Um,
I don't know what it is.
well, that's fine because they are living their lives and enjoying themselves. And that's a good thing. Humor and sarcasm, as we know, anybody who follows you on Twitter, that's really part of your way of communicating in the world. And what I also find is that relatable dust-ups with family and friends are also something that plays a role in what you speak to. And I love that term dust-up because I think it really describes a lot of my relationships sometimes with people. And we dust up, but then the dust settles and we enjoy ourselves and come back together. So I'm really curious about how you find the balance between humor and the serious analysis that you do, because you do both and you marry it quite well.
I think you can get away with saying a lot if you say it with a joke. Like, I think it's a lot easier to punch somebody in the mouth if after you like call yourself stupid and sort of do this, and then they kind of like it diffuses it a little bit. So it's often in service of that. And conversely, I think at a certain point, people don't really want to laugh at certain things. So you have to be serious because no one's going to find that funny. So I don't know. That's like a hard question to answer because it's very internal, and some people have a good ear for it and some people don't. And I think, when I was younger, I did not have a good ear for it. And I think every year that I get older, it gets better and better. And hopefully, I don't think it'll ever be perfect, but I mean, I think it's all in service of making a point. But also I have a real inability to be sincere. I'm not that good at it. So I don't want to do it. So that's why there's always a joke at the end of the sentence. Like this one. Yeah.
I had somebody describe it to me as you're always with the waka waka at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, crushing pandemic, waka waka.
Yeah, exactly.
So I do wonder when you've cultivated, you've got that wisdom in telling the point with humor and cultivating that blunt truth-telling voice. How has that been in a world where your gender gets accused of being shrill when you say meaningful things?
Oh, well, I mean, can I swear or am I going to get in trouble? Will Facebook fire me?
I think
I can
unless it's giving you a salary right now, I think it's
okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They can eat my shit. I don't really care. Like what the thing about the whole conversation around like, oh, if you're a woman and you're called shrill or like you're called annoying or whatever else, like, okay, they call you that and then what? Like what's the thing that happens after? I'm really lucky. I work almost exclusively with other women and with a lot of women of color. So I'm pretty lucky on that front where I don't deal with it that much in my work. But if it happens on the internet, well, okay, that's fine. But I'm paid to be shrill. What's your excuse? Like, it's working fine for me. I don't know.
I think, that voice of being shrill, it's it's so interesting because I don't think that when men are saying sarcastic, blunt things, that it's something that, is seen as shrill or seen as a problem. So I think you just doing it is a challenge in and of itself, and it's a good challenge.
Yeah. Well, I think for men, it's seen as a part of the gender. It's sort of like, I get asked a lot when I do book events, like, oh, why are you funny? And I'm like, what do you mean, why am I funny? Why are you funny? Why aren't you funny? Like, go get your shit together. And men don't get asked that. They're just sort of like, they get to move through the world in a very different way, and white men in particular. And, there's levels to it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Are there particular writers, comedians, and humorists that have influenced you?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was young, I read a lot of white men because that was what was available to me. So I loved David Sedaris and David Rakoff, or to Rakoff in particular, I think spoke to me a lot because he did reporting in his essays. And so they ended up feeling really nuanced and thoughtful and funny. I really, really love Sam Irby. Her essay collections are so gross. They're so gross and they're so funny. And I love them so much. And I think also I've been really lucky to work with people that I think I think are really smart, like Bim Adewunmi, who she's currently at This American Life. She does Thirst Aid Kit, which is a podcast about being horny, which I am all for. I mean, of course it's, I mean, I read a lot. So I think that's sort of the thing. It's like an old adage of like, you have to read if you want to write, but that is true. And it gets into your bones.
So, in your collection of essays, One Day We'll All Be Dead and None of This Will Matter, you do touch on all kinds of personal experiences, your relationships with your parents, fear of flying, racism, rape culture, trying on a skirt, getting stuck, and having to get cut out by a salesperson. So your book I found was really honest and clear, and it's just so relatable, and it helps make that connection to systemic dynamics, that personal to the political or personal to the systemic. And so tell us, what's been most challenging and most rewarding about sharing so much about yourself that way and making those connections between the personal and the political?
It can be uncomfortable sometimes because people think that they have a really good sense of you because they read a book about you, and then they sort of paint a picture of you in their head. That can be hard and a little destabilizing because you don't always match up with someone's expectations of you. But I think it's more rewarding than not. I mean, I wrote the book for myself, so it's nice when other people like it and when it speaks to their experiences. And I felt like a lonely kid and a lonely teenager, so I hope to make somebody feel moderately less lonely.
What I loved about your book is that I expected to laugh, but I didn't expect it to feel feelings. So I really appreciated that. I was both listening to the audiobook and reading at the same time, and I was, doing my daily pandemic walk and just crying.
That's what I want. If there's anything I want, is I want people to weep at the sound of my voice. I hope there are people listening to this crying at home.
Oh yes, yeah, just ugly crying in front of their computers. Yeah, it is happening. I'm pretty sure of it.
Good.
So you wrote, "We are deeply afraid of making marginalized voices stronger because we think it makes privileged voices or privileged ones that much weaker." Tell us about what voices you think we desperately need to hear today and what barriers you feel need to be removed. And then also, third part, rather than hoping magically that privileged voices will somehow make space for us, what do we need to do instead?
I think it's really galling that there are, alarmingly few Indigenous staff writers at most of the Canadian papers and magazines. I mean, I think you can count them on one hand at this point. And same is true for Black Canadian writers and Black women in particular. I mean, there's a huge dearth of them. I think brown women at this point in Canada are like, we're getting there in the media space, getting there, and that's great. But for those two groups, I mean, it's galling, and it's especially galling when it comes to Indigenous people, because Canadians love to like hit that note over and over again, and like, this is where we come from and blah blah blah, but then there's no representation for the very people that we're talking about. And especially because so much of our reporting is about those communities, and none of the people who are actually represented buy those stories are on those bylines and are doing any of that work. And the failure to fix that starts like it's an old problem. So every time some new editor comes in or someone comes in and says they're going to fix it, the problem is that they're trying to fix a problem that their predecessor let fester for a very long time. So at some point you have to make a decision that you're going to do like an apprenticeship program for Indigenous people, and you're going to pay them a livable wage, and that there aren't the barriers of an undergraduate degree at like Ryerson or U of T, and there aren't the barriers of 5 years of experience, and that there isn't the barrier of you're only going to make $30,000 a year and you have to live in Toronto. Like all of that feeds into this problem. And I've said that I say this a lot to publishers, and because publishers are always like, what do we do? Why don't we have like diverse voices? And it's like, well, you don't have any, all your editors are white. You don't have any Black or brown editors. You don't have any Indigenous editors. Like you don't have very few queer or LGBT or trans editors. You have made a choice to put these barriers up that make it impossible for people to enter. And then you're surprised that they don't stay. If they do get in the room, they get the shit kicked out of them while they're at work, and they can't progress. And so then they don't get promoted. And so that's why you don't have anybody who is 50 and can be an example of what that looks like, because you don't foster that talent. You want them to come in with a master's degree in English with no debt, so that they can work your crummy internship where they get paid $5 a day or whatever it is, to put up with being the minority in the room and smile and be happy with your free pizza on Fridays, and to sit there and, sorry, that's my cat's feeder because she needs to be fed 10 times a day. And to put up with all of that and to tough it out until one day you're promoted into a position where you have power. That is a 30-year plan. And you're not even beginning the first stages of it, which is hiring that person in. So what do you want me to do? And I get that asked this all the time by people with real power, by like executives and CEOs and editors. And it's like, if you have money, go spend it in the place that you think this, if you think this is important, go spend it there. Because I can't do that. I can read all the books I want, and I can support all the Indigenous and Black writers and artists and creators all I want. But if you don't give them the place to go do that thing, what do you want me to do? I don't run anything. If I did, I mean, hopefully that I would make better choices, but I don't. And so, and that's frustrating, but there's no willingness to view this as a problem beyond a PR issue, when in fact, like, your failure to have these people be present in these spaces is a business problem. You are losing money because your readership is steadily changing. It is becoming less and less white and less interested in the same fucking voices, and you have made no effort to change that because you think that it doesn't matter. Okay, well then watch your publication fester. That's between you and your God. I'm fine.
I like that you don't mince the words. I really feel that what you're speaking to is the difference between what we've seen, like a lot of performative stuff going on, and true change. And I guess time will tell. But true change is really about kind of changing where you put the money and changing, who you pay to do what.
And I think it's frustrating because, maybe 10 years ago, the spiritual changes would have been sufficient for the time. Like maybe we would have been okay with the Black Lives Matter Facebook post or whatever it was. But now it's like, girl, grow up. Like that does, like, fine. That's nice. I guess that's nice. I'm happy to hear that. But like, it's always startling to me that the people with the least amount of money are the ones that are putting that money where it counts. And these massive companies and these big publishers and these big media companies aren't doing that. And then they complain. And then they complain in public that they can't find anybody, and, oh, we can't find people who are qualified for this work, and we can't find people who are senior enough to do this job, and we can't find anybody who can be a manager. That's your fault. Go fix it.
Yeah. Go fix it and take the time. And it does take time, as you said, like it could be many years. So that dedication has to sustain itself for a really long time.
Yeah, and you should have started ages ago, but you didn't. But now you can do it now, but you have to, like, there's so much work that has to go into that, and I just don't think they're willing to do it. And so I don't buy a lot of the diversity is important to us. I mean, like, okay. I don't believe.
Yeah, it comes in the action. It comes with time, and it probably comes with much less tweeting about it all, much less
Yeah.
Instagram posts about it. Yeah. So I think along those lines, the title of your book, it's cute. On the cover of your book, it says, "One day we'll all be dead and none of this will matter," but the words are crossed out and it actually reads, "One day this will matter." And as a writer, that was so intentional.
I know. But also I was like, I wrote that so many years ago, and now people are quoting the cover to me, and I'm like, yeah, I know.
Well. So as a writer and as a journalist, tell me what you hope will matter about your work one day.
Jesus.
No surface questions.
Well, I actually kind of think that it doesn't matter. I think the ideal scenario is that there's a future that is much more progressive than the way that I think now. And I think it's like, I think we get caught up a lot with like, oh, so, and like, I don't know, like Margaret Atwood is always saying something bonkers and making me crazy. And I'm always like, well, maybe that's a good thing, because that means that I'm smarter than her, that generationally I've learned from some mistakes. And I think that this is ridiculous. There's other problems with what's going on there. But like, I would hope, and I feel that way now. Like, this book is a couple years old, 4 years. Oh God, I'm getting old. Okay, it's 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at it and there's stuff in there where I'm like, I probably wouldn't say it like that. And I probably would have added certain things and been more contextual in places. And I think that's good. I think feeling failed by your history is a positive, because it means that you're progressing. If people still read this and feel like it's still like telling them something they don't already know, I'm very worried about that. So I frankly hope that I hope it means less and less as time goes on. I think that's good, because I don't want to get stagnant, but I also don't think like, God, if in 10 years we're still having an argument about like, a woman gets raped and we're like, well, what was she wearing? Oh my God, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, I can't do that for another 15 years. I'm going to flip out. But I think that slowly having that stuff become irrelevant, especially in an age of where the internet exists and stuff dies on the vine real fast, I think that's good.
I do hope that we're not going to have that conversation in 15 years, but oh my gosh, I said that 15 years ago.
No. And that's, and you can kind of see it with people who write stuff and then they have to be held accountable for it later. I thought it was interesting what was going on with the conversation around Hamilton when it came out on Disney.
Mm-hmm.
And Lin-Manuel was on Twitter talking about it. And he was, I think, handling it well, where he was like, I'm grateful that people think that this is kind of like ridiculous. I watched it. It's jingoism and it's putting people of color in the position of slave owners. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, but that's good. That means we thought about it in the last few years and we've moved beyond this version of what diversity looks like. And now there's another one where we're telling different people's history and different versions of American history. And I think getting stuck in your ways and feeling embittered and feeling anxious that your work doesn't mean what it did in 1999, I think that's a waste of time.
Yeah, it's okay. Well said. BuzzFeed. So always striking a balance between the silly and the serious. It's well known for the pop culture quizzes and the listicles, as well as the traditional long form journalism. We really like to be a fly on the wall for a BuzzFeed editorial meeting. Shed some light on what that is about, because it's wild.
I don't think they're that interesting. I mean, I write a lot about the internet. We see stuff on the internet. I go to my boss and I say, may I? And she says, okay. Or she doesn't.
Hey.
That's it. I mean, it's not that complicated. I wish I had like a really fun, sexy, I wish there was like a bold type episode that this could be about. It's not. It's like pretty straightforward. Sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. I work on the culture desk, so I write a lot about the intersection of politics and pop culture. And, so one day we'll write something fun about Guy Fieri and how he's like a wonderful person. Other days it's something much more unpleasant about what's going on in the world. And but that's it.
So there's not a war room?
We don't have a war room. It's also weird now because I haven't been to the office since March. So
yeah.
I haven't seen anybody. I mean, my boss is also in LA, so we were kind of already equipped to be a very remote team. There's no war room. I don't know.
What is a war room? I don't even know myself.
Imagine the BuzzFeed war room, it would be like full of pizza. Like we're just not that kind of a company, which is fine
Yeah.
because I'm not that kind of a person. But I also don't work like, I work with very serious journalists, but I just don't do that kind of work. Like we have a great investigative team and really smart political reporters and a great tech desk and a great breaking news desk. But I'm like in the corner pulling on my dick, so I'm just not doing any of the stuff that they're doing. I'm glad because I'm not good at that. So.
You started a podcast called Not Great.
Mhm.
You introduce yourself as being our Sherpa through garbage. So we have a lot of questions.
Well,
How did the podcast come about?
we pitched it a long time ago, and we wanted to do it last year. But things take time. And then the virus hit, and so we were sort of like, well, do we do it anyway? And I was like, yeah, what better time to talk about how things are garbage than right now? I mean, it's a particularly wretched, odious time to be alive. So that's it. I mean, it's just my brain in podcast form. I'm upset and I put it there, and then I make you listen to it so I can drain the emotional abscess in my body.
I like podcast therapy. I appreciate that. Give us a sneak peek. What garbage are you going to navigate in future episodes?
So we release every Tuesday. So Tuesday's episode will be about the DNC. So we're talking a lot about the strangeness of them sort of presenting the DNC as being aligned with the protesters and with Black Lives Matter, which doesn't make sense because Joe Biden does not want to defund the police. So I don't know what the hell they're talking about. And then the following week, we'll have to do something in the RNC. Remains to be seen, since that is starting on Monday. And, I got to get it. I have to refill my Klonopin prescription, and then I'll be able to have more cogent thoughts about it. But right now I'm unmedicated, so I don't really have any thoughts on it. But, it's a timely show. So it sort of depends on what happens in the week. I didn't foresee that I would be writing a whole episode about Ellen, but we did, because Christy Yandoli, who's my colleague, wrote like that barn burner story about how Ellen is, apparently that show is a hard place to work. So yeah, I mean, it remains to be seen. I think we're doing episodes until right after the election, so it's going to be a hairy few months, and we've got, what is it, like 75 days or something before the election. So I can't plan, because if I've learned anything about living here for a year and a half, is that nothing I think matters and nothing that I anticipate happens. And so I wait to see what fresh hell Trump unleashes upon me through a tweet, and how he punishes me cosmically yet again. So we'll see what happens.
Well, you can't say that your life is not interesting, okay? You can't say that.
I mean, what do you think is interesting? Like, it depends on what you think interesting is. Interesting? Maybe.
So I need to ask about your dad. Your dad's voice was in your audiobook, and I liked it. I liked it lots. Your dad, is he still a diva after appearing on your show?
Right. Sucks. I hate it. He's the worst part of doing the podcast. He's the most difficult part. He is incredibly difficult to schedule. He's really fussy about being edited. After the first episode, he called me upset that he had been edited. I don't know if he thought that it was just going to be 40 minutes of him talking. And then I found out he didn't actually finish the episodes, so he didn't hear that he appeared repeatedly throughout the show, but he, of course, only listened to the first 5 minutes. Today, I asked him when he would be willing to record, and he told me right now, because I have chores. So I went into my closet, which is where we record, and did it with him and asked him what chores he possibly had, and it was that he needed to boil 2 eggs and empty the dishwasher. End of list. So he will die by my hand. I just haven't decided when. Got to make it look like an accident. So lots of work to do, but yeah.
Plan it really well.
I mean, he's hell. He is hell as a person. I mean, people always like, I think people meet me and they think I'm going to be really difficult, and I'm actually quite accommodating. And I think it's because I have been trained by someone who's deeply difficult. So at this point, to frustrate me with your energy, you really have to like ratchet it up. Like, you got to like kick my cat or something for me to react. He's a lot of
He's
work.
made you resilient. I think you have to really thank him. The man has made you resilient.
At what cost? At what cost?
So you did mention in a recent BuzzFeed column, I can't speak right now, you said this really important thing that I just want to talk about because I think we need to talk more about it as brown people, fellow brown folks. Just like white people, Indians have also been steeped in anti-blackness from early on in our history, even in moments when we too were being oppressed. I can speak about this for days, so I'd like to talk to you for just a few minutes about this. Tell us some of the ways you think non-Black people, such as brown folks, need to challenge anti-Blackness and white supremacy.
Well, I mean, um, I am and also was raised by Brahmins and Kashmiri Brahmins, which is a very particular subsection of the brown community. There's lots of debate over whether or not we're Indians or not. I will leave it up to other people to make that decision for themselves. But I mean, like, it starts at birth. Like, I come out of my mother and everyone's glad because I'm fair. And I get older and I get a little darker, so they start keeping me out of the sun. And my hair, this is my natural hair, just out of the, like, air dried basically. So I have straight hair and I don't have any texture in it. And I have a relatively sizable nose, but not too big, so that's okay. They'll live with it. But it starts really early, and you're conditioned really early to feel bad about being dark. Plus, I mean, there's an incredibly complicated caste system that comes with being Indian that's like, God, where do I begin, right? But it's fed to us really early. And the whole point of it is to maintain proximity to whiteness, because then we believe that we will be saved somehow. And there's lots of communities that do versions of this. I mean, lots of otherwise oppressed communities side with their oppressors because they think that, like, when push comes to shove, they'll be tended to, and they will not. It never works, and it won't work. I don't know which piece you read, but I wrote about Dinesh D'Souza, who is a nightmare man. But he is, I think he's from Mumbai. Yeah, he's from Mumbai, but he lives in the States now. He's a citizen. But he's a pretty dark-skinned guy and not really from, like, an ethnic group that I think even within India is particularly prized, but he has made a choice to side with the people that want to hurt his community and hurt the people adjacent to his community. And that is a choice that he's making because he thinks he will preserve, and he won't. So, I mean, there's lots of things to think about. I mean, chief amongst them is how much appropriation happens of Black culture within brown communities. I mean, like, it's so frustrating to watch brown people use Black slang, say the N-word really casually. And they do all of this, but they also would never date a Black person, won't bring a Black person home, won't talk to their parents about Black people. They don't interrogate any of their anti-Blackness within themselves, but they rip the culture off and wear it as they see fit. But also, if they ever saw a white woman wearing a bindi at Coachella, they'd flip out rightly. But we think that because we're not white, we can sort of traffic in this appropriation as if it's okay, and it's not. And part of that is because I think in American culture and in Canadian culture too, Black pop culture takes over, and we don't have anything to look at. We don't have a lion's share of movies where we're a wedge minority. We sit in the middle. And so we don't want to appeal to white culture. So we take from another community, which, for what? But we don't talk to our parents about it. When they say things that are racist, we just sort of roll our eyes and go like, oh, uncle, ridiculous. And we move on. And I've gotten into fights with my family about this. And there's family members I don't speak to anymore because they're not willing to accommodate the conversation. I can live with you at least trying. You know, I don't think, like, my dad, I don't think he's a perfect person when it comes to these things, but I think he's made incredible progress in the last few years, and I think he's willing to listen to it. But there's other people who don't. And I had to make a choice at a certain point of, like, what I was willing to accept in my airspace. And some of it I just don't think is acceptable. But it's not lost on me why we do it. We do it because we think this will keep us safe, and it won't.
I think you're right on point. And not only will it keep us safe, but we do get some benefit out of it. You know,
for
being a model minority can have its
yeah,
power.
it works out. I mean, it's not lost on me that like a chunk of my success is inevitably tied to the fact that I'm like a fair-skinned Indian person with a Canadian passport and I was born in Canada. You know, there's a lot of privilege there. It's not lost on me at all why that happened and why it happened that way.
Well, you know, I really appreciate your voice. I appreciate that you're even willing to speak to that. There are a few folks in the media and in the public sphere.
I don't
It's really
understand.
helpful.
I just don't get, like, I don't know what you lose by saying you've been lucky.
Mm.
What do you lose? I don't lose anything. Like, I don't think that by saying that I'm saying that I'm a bad writer. I think I had to work a little harder because I'm not white, but not that hard. Like, I think it's, you know, like there's luck, you know, and I think this is why like lots of people get frustrated when they have conversations about certain South Asian people who get prominence, is that they won't admit to the luck. Just admit to the luck. It's okay. Like nothing, it's not gonna, you're not gonna have it get taken from you unless you're actually bad at what you're doing. And I know I'm not bad at what I'm doing. So it doesn't, I don't lose any sleep about that. Just say you're lucky. All right. You know, I
Yep,
would
well
love,
said.
love if my luck didn't come at the expense of other people. So that's the thing to actually work on. If my luck
Yes.
was just my luck, that's fine, but it comes at the expense of often darker skinned brown women and black women and indigenous women without question. I mean, that's just what it is. So, you know, if you're going to be the model minority, you got to work against it somewhere.
That's right. If you're going to get that privilege, take the space and use it well. I love that.
And I think it took me a while to figure that out because when I was younger, you hear that and you get resentful and you think like, no, but I worked really hard and, you know, people have been racist against me. How could I? And then you have to wait and think about it and
Mhm.
readjust and, you know, but yeah, I don't know. And that's sort of what I'm saying about like becoming irrelevant. Like I think some of the stories I tell in the book, I think eventually will be irrelevant, you know, like the trials and tribulations of like a Northern Indian gal in Calgary, eventually no one's going to care. And that's great. I'll write about something else. It's okay. I have other things to talk about. That's fine. I hope for it to, you know, when I talk to my niece she's very white passing, but the things that that happen at school like are so not that, like the reasons people are bullied are so not the reasons I was bullied. And I'm like quietly like, when did that fucking happen? Like, I don't understand this, but also I'm glad she's living in a much better world than I am. It's not perfect, but you know, wasn't that the point of all of this, like to make it better? So great, it's better.
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so curious about your cute niece, who teaches you so much. It's really great to see that intergenerational element about it, and that things are maybe getting better in some ways, and in other ways we got to push. So speaking of that, the Netflix show Indian matchmaking. Yeah, you spoke about this and you said, ridiculous though as it may sound, I'd kill for a reality show featuring Indians where their lives don't seem challenging or inspirational, where they aren't maintaining racist ideology they inherited from their parents. So tell us, what is this new show? What is it called? What's it about? Where can I watch it?
I
And
mean,
how can we make it right now?
yes, I got so much blowback on that piece, namely from Indians in India, because I think they thought I was saying that the tribulations of being a brown person are divorced from the rest of your identity. I don't think that's true. I think you can have both. I don't know what that show looks like. I don't want to be on it. I would like to produce it. But wouldn't you watch like Family Karma tried to do this on Bravo a little bit. They only had one season. I hope they get another one because I think there's legs there. But that show was so much focused about like the traditions and like who's being rude to which auntie and like blah blah blah, and that's relevant for sure. But I think it gets bogged down by that a lot, and that ends up being the identity. You know, I mean, I'm just tired of people asking me if I was supposed to be arranged, and I just don't want to talk about this anymore. Like, there surely is something else to discuss. I think they should have given Ankita her own show. She was so clearly there because she was like promoting her business. God bless. Like, I would watch 40 seasons of her just telling men to eat her butt and her building her own business and fighting with a business partner and like like that would be enough, you know, like I think I don't know, maybe that'll happen. Or like Vyasar was such a nice guy and had such a complicated story that I don't think they really finished. Like they sort of introduced all this stuff about his dad. Why is my block so loud today? Sorry. I don't know why. Like I don't know. Everyone's lost their mind. It's Friday.
You know, I live in Toronto. That's like background music now.
Exactly.
People are very cool in their cars right now.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, like, yeah, I don't know. I think there's like there's more to do. I mean, you know, it was a weird show because it was accurate but frustrating. Like, yeah, that stuff is true and all of that does happen. I just, you know, would have liked, I don't know. Maybe the problem was that the show didn't interrogate the shitty parts that it was actually showing. So like the constant, I don't want anybody too dark. You say that with your chest and nobody's going to check you on that show. There's no voice to say like there is, you couldn't figure that out. Even to have a producer hear it and break the third wall and say like, what? Because there were people who watched it, friends of mine who are white, who were like, I thought fair meant pretty. And I was like, well, technically it does, but what it means is it means white. When they have conjoined the terms into one. And so like, I think that's maybe what it was missing, and it would have been less frustrating as an experience of documenting what those sorts of unions look like. I also think it's very suspicious that none of those couples ended up together, especially that boy, I can't remember his name, the one who got engaged. It's a big deal to get engaged and then to break an engagement. What the hell happened? Fishy.
So fishy. You know, it's really interesting because I sort of feel like mixed when I see these documentaries. I'm like, just put it out and don't say anything about what. No, in this particular case, I have to tell people like, don't believe this. Don't take this without a grain of salt, please. You know, there's as many things as there are that are interesting about this. You know, don't go and do likewise. I don't know. I feel like a mom when I watch this show. I just feel like I need to tell every young person I know to please just do not take this example.
It also felt a little like the SEMA's type of matchmaking is on its way out. Her matchmaking is so focused on the parents, and I think she's trying to adjust her business, but I don't think it's quite there yet. I would be interested in maybe maybe they do another season, they pick a different matchmaker. Also, that woman is like so not. She was. She just had this like auntie face of not wanting to do it, which I kind of appreciated. Didn't she look miserable in every scene? I frankly, I loved it, and yet I was like, how did this work? I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think they didn't have any checks and balances. But maybe there's a second season. Maybe they'll figure that out.
That's right. You know, they're just introducing the concept, and then they're going to hit us with some like wokeness.
Who knows?
But as soon as
TV's hard. First seasons of TV is hard. You know, I think.
Yes.
Trying to make this show appeal to an overwhelmingly white audience. Frankly, they released it on Netflix US. That's where it lived. So yeah,
can't be easy. Okay, so switching to something else entirely, you've had really awful experiences with harassment and hate on social media. You speak about this in your book. I think just following you on Twitter, you can see some of these things playing out, and it's terrible. And you did write about your conflicted relationship with social media. It is part of your job's best practices to say be on Twitter, but that is not a safe place for racialized women, to say the least. So how do you manage this dynamic? Are there harm reduction techniques that you would recommend on social media?
Yeah, I would say if you feel a little unequipped for the brunt of it, to maybe limit you can go private. You don't have to have a public account. You also don't have to do it. Like, I don't think you have to do any of this if you don't want to do it. I think it helps. Certainly if you want to be a writer or something, I think that's always helpful, but you don't have to do it. Lots of people do it without having a Twitter account. I think you have to make decisions about what kind of fights you want to get into. And frankly, I only get into a fraction of the fights I used to. But I think I'm also at this point where it got so bad, and I like got through to the other side, that like, what are you going to do to me? And I think that's like the lesson you kind of have to learn for yourself when use those platforms is like, what could you do? So I'm not on Facebook anymore because it's just not worth it. And
Yeah.
I don't really want to, I don't want to engage with it. I'm frustrated by the privacy issues. I'm frustrated by the conspiracy theories that are foisted upon us. I was really frustrated by how many people were trying to get access to my account to dox me. I've had that account. I had that account since I was 14 or something, because that's just when I got it. You know, and then trying to find a way to use it comfortably never happened. And so I was like, why am I doing this? So I don't do that anymore. And then with my Instagram, I don't post photos of my niece anymore because that backfired hugely. And on Twitter, I just don't care. Just don't care. But I mean, I don't know. I also think I wasn't always built like that, but I think when you kind of get the shit kicked out of you, it just sort of becomes like, what could you do to me? And I always say this to like my colleagues in the States, because they're always like, how, like, you're fine with it. And I'm like, well, what you don't realize is I had a whole career in Canada and I already had this happen. Like, I went viral when I was 24 and it was the worst. And I didn't know how to climb out of it and I didn't know what to do. And I really thought my like career was over because everybody was so mad at me. So now what are you going to do? You already tried to get me fired and it didn't work.
I always tell people you can opt out, and I know it might be seen as poor practice to do it depending on what job you're in, but the truth is your
Like,
mental health, your well-being.
but if you're trying to have a forward-facing job, in some degree, you can just make a website. You can make a website and you can have an Instagram where you turn off the comments and you don't read your messages. It's fine. That's fine. You can do that. And I mean, Twitter has also put in all of these functions at this point. You can limit replies to people you follow. You can limit replies to no one. You can turn your DMs off so nobody who doesn't follow, like, you can figure a way out to do this. But also some people just aren't, they don't like it, and that's fine. If you don't like it, don't do it.
Okay, so this is the most kind of up down discussion that we've had. We're going to go on to lightning round questions, fun stuff. Pessimistic, optimistic lightning round is what we're calling it. Okay, so for every optimistic thing we're going to ask you the same thing, pessimistic. Okay, dream journalism project.
I want I want to do a profile of Dan Blazarian. I find him fascinating and I think he leads a very strange life, and I would like to ask him some questions about it. He also appears to be like on the Amalfi Coast right now, so I'm wondering how he's doing that in the middle of a pandemic. He's on a boat. I'm
Fascinating.
I'd really like to do that. I don't know why, but that I think would be really fun.
Okay, worst journalism project.
I mean, it was worse because it was hard. I used to write the obituaries at one of my jobs, and they were longer. You had to call and like it was just unpleasant. It was hard. I was sad, and a lot of the people who I was writing about were young, and yeah, I didn't like doing that. It's hard to make a joke when you're writing an obituary, and so I had to adjust my tone a lot. So I didn't like.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, this is a very important question. Glasses you want to try.
Like glasses?
Mm-hmm. Any shape, any color that you're just like, I would love to try that.
I don't know if there's anything left for me to try. I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe I'll try some like Rachel Maddow.
Uh-huh.
I used to have ones like that, but my husband said it made me look like Groucho Marx, and I thought about it and I'm like, oh, I do. It was like the eyebrows, and like I have like it was just the way they sat. Like like, I think this is maybe the wrong angle. I was like, I think you're right. So I haven't really re-ventured in there, but yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought too much about that.
Glasses you would never wear.
Those rimless Sarah Palin, you know, like little panes of glass with the wire. I don't like that.
Have you ever tried the rectangle ones that are like severe rectangles but tiny?
Yeah, I don't like those either. I don't like small glasses. This whole tiny sunglass thing is really upsetting to me. I don't understand who it's for. And all of them, like, they're all sitting down here. I don't get it. Like it just makes my face hurt when I even think about it. I don't understand that at all. That's how I know I'm getting old, is because all these Gen Z kids are wearing teeny tiny glasses and I'm like, how are you seeing? I don't understand. This is like when I was younger and I would never put my hair up and my dad would just be like, put your hair up. It's in your face. Like, I hate it. And I would be like, you're such a loser. Leave me alone. And I'd be walking around like this because I thought this was what looked right. And now I'm walking around seeing teenagers with these teeny tiny glasses and being like, there's no UV protection. What a waste of your time.
All right. That was enlightening. Okay, I want to know a curmudgeon's nightmare destination.
Oh, anywhere.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Wherever.
What is a curmudgeon's safe place?
Home. Home under specific circumstances. So like everything in the house is working and no one's calling me and I'm alone.
Mm-hmm. Least favorite sound?
Least favorite sound. I don't have a lot of sound problems. That's a really good question because I feel like I'm surrounded by people with like my husband hates the sound of chewing, which doesn't bother me at all. And so I feel like I'm always adjusting my sounds to accommodate him. Least favorite sound. I don't think I have one. That's a good question. Let me think about it. If I think of something, I'll come back.
Oh, you think about that one. Okay, so what is your favorite sound? Do you have a favorite sound?
Yeah, when my niece was little, the babbling that she would do when she was about 2, she just talked with such useless authority. It was sort of funny to like listen to her, and she really thought she knew what she was saying. I guess she did. I'm being dismissive. She did. But I missed
Didn't
that
understand.
when she was little and dumb. Yeah.
Okay, this is an important one as well. A topic that was mansplained to you poorly.
I'm poor. I got an email the other day about some guy wanted to explain Indian culture to me because he said that he had gone to India in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't finish that email, but I'm pretty sure the rest of it was probably full of gems.
Yes, glorious. A topic that was actually mansplained to you quite well.
Does that exist? I mean, my husband's a financial journalist, so I don't understand how money works or the economy. So but I don't even think of that as mansplaining because I'm asking. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
what is the stock market and why do I have to care?
Yeah.
But even then, he explains it to me. I still don't get it. So I don't know. This probably fails on both fronts because it's an explainer I'm requesting, and B, I don't understand.
I think it would be mansplaining if he was like, well, it's just this, and then told you the same way a second time and a third time and a fourth time. Well, that's when it would go into the mansplain territory.
He would like me to understand it. I mean, first, I think he'd like me to understand my taxes, which I don't. But I pay people to do stuff like that. I don't care.
You don't need to know that. All right. So I have a couple of questions from the audience, and then we'll release you. But this has been just so fascinating. I just want to thank you very much for sharing your wonderful ideas and thoughts and your curmudgeonly views. I want to know, has your writing, Kate asks this, has your writing ever triggered difficult conversations with your family or friends? And you did mention a few of those, but give us a sense.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about my writing and my family is they generally know not to read it if it's going to bother them. So my dad never read my book. Even now, he still hasn't read it. I think with my brother, it's generated some uncomfortable conversations. He's really private. And I don't write about him a lot, but he's in the periphery of the stuff that I write. And sometimes I think it's frustrating for him. But not in any significant way, partly because I think if you write about your personal life and your family and your friends, but you make yourself the object of ire and you're the asshole in the story, you can get away with a lot. And so I don't usually write stories where I'm like, and then my mother did this and I've never forgiven her. Like, and I mean, obviously there's stuff like that between her and I, but I just don't write it down because I don't feel like doing that. And And maybe when she's dead, I will. But I mean, God, they are living for a while, so it's just not taking. So for now, I have to be the dick. That's fine. But I mean, I don't know. I think, you know, I sold my second book, but I'm obviously having a hard time finishing it because these are not great conditions to be doing that. But I feel like that might make some of them mad, but we'll see. I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
No, it could very well be that the irritation they feel about you at times is what's giving them life. So really they should say thank you.
Oh, that's what I
Thank you, dear Scaachi. You just remind them that when you feel they're forgetting that.
will.
Okay, another question that has been asked here as well too. What's a story that you read and you loved?
Oh, ooh, yeah. Taffy, I think it's Brodus or Ackner. All of her profiles I'm so jealous of. I'm so jealous of every profile she's ever written. They're so good. I think Taylor Lorenz is such a good internet reporter, and she works for the Times. She's really good. Um, yeah. Ooh, what else was there? There was a good piece in Mel magazine about, oh God, I've completely blanked on it. I mean, yeah, I don't know. you know what I'm really jealous of are people who can write fiction, because I can't.
Mm.
So I like read Luster earlier this year and it broke my brain. It's such a good book. It's so good, and I like am in awe of Raven's like synapses. My editor at BuzzFeed just wrote a book called Life Events, which is amazing. It's so good. I don't know when she found the time, but I can't write fiction. I'm not good at it at all. I wish I were, but yeah, that's the sort of stuff when I read it and I'm like, fuck.
That's wonderful. You know, you say you're not good at writing fiction, but I do feel that fiction and nonfiction, it's very similar skills. Like you have to apply the same kind of lessons.
Good essay writing reads like good fiction, and I know that. I guess I just haven't. Maybe I haven't come up with a story compelling enough um, to do. Maybe that'll happen. It just hasn't happened yet. But I don't know. I think I like dealing in nonfiction because you get these, like you get wrenches and the story changes because someone tells you something and then you have to change directions. Or even with essay stuff, if I have in my brain what the narrative is about something that happened when I was younger and I talk to my mother and it's different, like then you have to move, you have to go to a new place, and I kind of like that. Maybe I just don't want all the control.
Well, Scaachi, we are coming to an end. Thank you so much for your just insights, your openness, your hilariousness. And I do want to ask you, when can we expect to be able to buy your next book? Where can we get it? Give us a sense. Do you have a sense?
I
Are you
don't,
still working on it?
I'm still working on it. It got pushed back,
Mm.
pushed it back by at least a year. So it was supposed to come out fall 2021. I don't think that's happening. So it's going to be a minute. I need to be able to my second book has more reporting in it than the first. So I need to go talk to people, and I had reporting assignments figured out, and now I have to start over and see what I can do in New York for now. And then, you know, if I can ever get back to Toronto and maybe do some there and then talk to my family. And so, yeah, it'll be a while.
It'll be a minute. It'll be like something really well baked when it comes out. Just look at it like that.
Hope so. I've been sitting on it for a while, but in the meantime, we're still doing the podcast, so those episodes go up every Tuesday morning, and I'm still writing for BuzzFeed, so you can find me.
Wonderful. Well, folks, make sure you listen to the podcast.
Yeah. And rate it and subscribe and tell your friends, and don't tell me anything negative about it because I'll kill you.
Only good things. She can only handle that right now. Okay.
You're fragile, notoriously fragile.
Well, thank you so much, Scaachi, for joining us. It was just a pleasure to chat with you. And folks, I just want to do a little bit of a wrap up. Just be so grateful that we get to hear such wonderful voices just joining us in this podcast, in this Facebook Live. Maybe one day we'll turn it into a podcast, but just it's so wonderful to get this opportunity to speak to such great voices and hear you know, the diversity of writers out there. So many thanks. And as I mentioned, folks, we are in this pandemic time, really steadfastly trying to support all the women and girls and diverse folks that we are supporting through our programs and through the Childless Together Fund. And anything that you can donate to this fund, I want you to know that this is going to go to organizations that are doing great work and trying to just make through the pandemic. It's a hard time, and I know that it's hard for everybody. So any amount that you can give, any way that you can support it, even just sharing it with somebody else, much appreciated. And do know that everything makes a difference right now. So we really thank you for it. And thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. Just have a great night. Be safe, be well. And thank you, Scaachi. Have a great one. And we hope to see you soon. Bye.